Good afternoon, Miss Lawrence. It's a great thrill to welcome you here in Dunedin at last.
Thank you, Jessie. It's lovely to be here. We had a perfectly beautiful trip down today. The mountains were so beautiful.
Well, I'm very glad that this part of New Zealand's turning on the best for you.
Oh, it certainly did today. It was really lovely.
Well, Miss Lawrence, there are so many things I want to ask you that I hardly know where to start. But I think if you'd be so kind, we might start right back when you were a little girl.
Well, I was born in a very small country town in the bushland of Australia. I think the population was 100. So you see, it was very tiny. Then at the age of 18, I won a musical operatic contest sponsored by the Melbourne Sun newspaper. After that, my father sent me to Paris to study, and after studying 2.5 years there, I made my debut at the Monte Carlo Opera in the role of Elizabeth in Tannhäuser. After that, I immediately was engaged at the Paris Grand Opera, and from there I came to the Metropolitan Opera of New York, and of course until the war my home was in Paris. I would sing in New York for the season and then return to Paris, and of course I've sung in most of the great opera houses of the world. And my first trip back to my own country was in 1939 for a very short visit. Then I came home during the war about 5 years ago to sing for the troops, and here I am again on my third visit to Australia and my very first to New Zealand.
Well, we're just so delighted to have you here. We did hear about you coming down to sing to the boys during the war, and we'd hoped for a trip, but at least hoped for a visit from you, but that was just out of the question then, wasn't it?
Well, it was on account of the transportation, you see. I've always wanted to come to New Zealand and been most excited about it, but during the war it was just not possible. So this time, when it was a question of coming home to Australia again, I said, now I must go to New Zealand, and my husband was very, very keen to see this beautiful country, so here we are.
Well, that's just grand. Now, would you tell us a little bit about some of the opera houses in Europe, some of the places in which you've sung and the roles which you've sung?
Well, as I say, that would take me quite a long time. I've sung in nearly all of them, and of course the dramatic repertoire, mostly Wagnerian roles and others of the soprano dramatique, such as Aida and Cavalleria and Donna Anna, Mozart, and the French repertoire. Then, of course, all Wagner's Ring, all the Brunnhildes, and the Tristan and Isolde and Parsifal. Of course, one of the interesting things, I think, is that, of course, in France I sing them all in French, and in New York I sing them all in German. So I sing nearly every role in about 3 languages.
Have you got any special preference?
I like the difficult ones. I was never very fond of the easy roles. I love the role of Brunnhilde and also of Isolde, and of course the very difficult one of Electra by Richard Strauss, probably the most difficult role ever written for any vocal equipment.
That's not performed very often, is it?
No, very, very rarely, mostly on account of the singers.
Yes. Now, would you tell us something about the Metropolitan Opera in New York?
Well, that's a very glamorous place. Of course, the season is from end of October until the end of March, and the greatest singers from all over Europe and from America all gather there. And it's always a very glamorous occasion, like Covent Garden or Paris Opera.
And I suppose the opening night is just out of this world, isn't it?
Yes, it's a very fashionable audience. Everyone trying to outdo the other, of course, especially the women.
Now, you mentioned Covent Garden. I suppose you've sung with Sir Thomas Beecham, have you?
Yes, he's one of my favorite conductors. I've sung a great many times with Sir Thomas. and it's always a great artistic experience.
Mm-hmm. Of course, he is, I suppose, one of the greatest individualists in the musical world, isn't he?
Yes, definitely. During the last few years, I think I've been to Europe several times. I've traveled through England, toured through England 3 or 4 times, and of course right through Scotland, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Dundee, all through France and Berlin. I was chosen as the first artist to come and sing with the Berlin Philharmonic since the war, after the war.
That must have been an amazing experience, Miss
It
Lawrence.
was a very great experience because it was given for all the commanders there, General Clay and General Sir Brian Robertson, General Noiré, General Kotikov. I was the first to sing Wagner since the war, and of course on that occasion they had 1,200 screened Germans also for the first time since the war. It was very amazing because it was a unique audience. At the end I sang also in Russian, the Tchaikovsky, and this great final scene from Gotterdämerung, which I will sing tomorrow night here in Dundee. But at the end, all the audience, they were all calling out in a different language. French, Russian, German, and English.
Yes. And what was the orchestra like? I suppose it's been completely dismembered during the war, had it?
Yes, but now it's very wonderful again.
Yes.
And each year, of course, it improves. Mm-hmm. And of course, Wagner is more of a religion for them. Mm-hmm. And when they are called upon to play it, it's always a great experience.
Yes. And now, Miss Lawrence, to get away from the more serious side of music to something that I know all our women listeners are very interested in, and that is your very lovely styles for the concert stage. Tell us a bit about them. Who designs the dresses?
Well, Perfido from New York and Paris designs quite a lot of my gowns. They have to be a little special, as you can realize, yards and yards of material. And then Catherine Kuhn also, she designs for many of the movie stars, Sonia Haney and so forth. So the one that I will wear tomorrow night, my opening concert, is my husband's favorite. It's emerald green satin with shoulder straps of gold sequins and a chiffon drape around, also with sequins and beaded. And of course now with the recent styles, one is obliged to wear under each frock a lace petticoat of about 40 yards of material. So it all adds up to something quite glamorous, I think.
Yes, I can imagine. And another thing too, Miss Lawrence, we've noticed the very lovely hats you wear. Do you get a morale lift out of hats?
Well, Jessie, I really call them my pepper-uppers. I have quite a stock of hats. I must say, though, each time I visit Australia, my family and friends and that, as soon as they see me, they say, now, when you go, could you leave me this hat and that hat? So last time I left, I got back to America with one hat. I've done a little better this time. I still have 3 or 4 left.
But it's lovely to be able to start afresh, isn't it, and buy a whole lot of new hats?
Oh, yes. I couldn't bring them all with me to Dunedin, but I have several in Wellington.
Yes. Whereabouts is your home, Lawrence?
It's in about the center of the United States, in Hot Springs, Arkansas. That is about 75 miles from the Texas border. And it's in a very lovely spot. We have a ranch there of about 500 acres, and it's called Harmony Hills.
Lovely name.
We have little hills. They'd be awfully small hills to you in New Zealand. And there we have cattle and chickens and turkeys and dogs and birds, all kinds of things.
Oh, it sounds lovely. A real home.
That's right.
Yes. And what are you going to do after you leave New Zealand?
Well, I will fly. We leave Dunedin and then go back to Wellington and then to Auckland and fly, of course, to Honolulu, where we will stay for 2 or 3 days to rest a little, then right back to our home, where we hope to have a month's vacation. It will be autumn then, and the autumn in that part of the country is very lovely. The hills are all gold and red, and it's beautiful. And then we will return to New York for the big musical season, And, of course, my book will be published there, too, for the first time in America. And,
do you mean to say that we've had a prior publication out here?
Yes.
Well, isn't that great?